Yeah, if we can round people up, that would be great. I was hoping we might have ended up with a couple of minutes in hand between. Never mind.
Put the mic back on.
Great, thank you.
Interesting to see how this goes.
I think we'll be all
First
right.
experience.
I think we'll be all right. Oh, this bit will be good. It's when we get into next week.
I'm not.
It'll be fun. All right, good morning and welcome to the hearing of verbal submissions for the draft annual plan 2020-21. This is the first of a number of sittings of this hearing panel over the next few days. So we will open the meeting and we're here, of course, to hear the verbal submissions on the draft annual plan 2020-21. We're hearing these submissions concurrently with the same period in which people are putting in written submissions. And where written submissions have already been provided, they'll be made available to councillors on the hub. There will be situations where people are making a verbal submission either at the same time as they're lodging a written submission or in some cases before that written submission has been lodged. So we're working in quite a dynamic environment, and I would ask for flexibility on the part of everybody as we do that. So we've got a schedule of verbal submissions for today, which is contained in the agenda for this meeting. We're essentially hearing from community boards before morning tea, and then a number of other key organisations and key organisations after morning tea. So I've got a officer recommendation, paragraph 2, that we receive the verbal submissions to be heard on Friday the 19th of June. I'm happy to move that. Sam, you'll second it. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. And now let's move straight into the hearing of submissions. So I'd like to invite, representing the Banks Peninsula Community Board, the Chair, Tori Peden, to the table. Tori, good morning. Thank you for joining us. You have the auspicious role of being the first in a long line of submitters we'll be hearing from over the next few days.
Morena, thank you, and good luck for the next few days. Do appreciate the time. Now, you would have seen our written submission would have been in with you guys a few days ago. First of all, we want to point out that the rates relief, the board does support the lowest proposed average rate increase of 3.5%. Community funding boost. The board strongly supports the proposed 5% increase in funding for the Strengthened Community Fund to support our community organisations recovering from the impact of COVID-19 crisis. Christchurch NZ and Heritage grants. The board is comfortable with the proposed $1.8 million reduction in the grant to Christchurch NZ and Heritage, as long as this reduction is not increased. Recruitment freeze. The board is also comfortable with the proposed recruitment freeze, as long as the board continues to have the appropriate governance staff support required for effectively carrying out its role. Destination Management Plan for Banks Peninsula. The board is seeking operational funding, not extra funding, for the 2020-2021 for council staff to resource to scope the Destination Management Plan for Banks Peninsula. You will have heard from concerned local Peninsula residents who see the cruise ship industry and the Freedom Campus as both a blessing and a curse. The board wishes to develop a plan which balances all the interests and makes the peninsula the jewel of the crown for the city, a place where residents and visitors alike enjoy. We want to scope the plan this year and then be able to produce a developed brief for the long-term plan funding. Capital program. The board are mostly comfortable with the proposed minor timing adjustments to the capital program for the peninsula, aside from the board's requests below. Public toilets, Oxford Street, Littleton. These toilets are in poor condition and do not serve present users and visitors' needs. We understand that the upgrade has been estimated to $350,000, but no budget has been assigned. The council has lodged an application for $175,000 with the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment in the late March 2020 to assist with funding the refurbishment and additional capacity for toilets at Littleton Information Centre. No decision has been received. The board requests that funding for the 2020-2021 for this period we're happy to reprioritise funding for the development of other toilets on the peninsula. Here's one of concern for myself and the board, is the O'Kane's Bay potable water supply. The O'Kane's Bay potable water supply was included in the original draft annual plan 2020-2021, but has been removed from the updated version. Given the national focus on safe water supplies and that the council has camping ground at O'Kane's Bay, the board sees this as a priority to at least have some funding in the annual plan so that planning, tendering, consenting and engineering can be done before the long-term plan. I have actually spoken with staff and they have asked that it's approximately 10% of the budget be left on so they can do that engineering report and the consenting so we can be ready to roll for the long-term plan. The Akaroa and Littleton Design review panels, board requests that $8,000 of funding requests that $8,000 to fund 4 meetings for high priority urban design projects across Littleton and Akaroa be kept. Reserve management committees, you'll see that we are supporting submissions from some of our 15 reserve management committees, subcommittees of the board, who do amazing volunteer work on the peninsula reserves and provide real value for money for the council, as well as being the forefront of delivering council community outcomes. And lastly, I would like to just raise the Little River Playground project. That is probably not in our written submission, but it has been brought to my attention recently. We're concerned that funding has been pulled from this project at the 11th hour. Staff were preparing the final design consultation to be at the Little River Pumpkin Festival in late April, had the COVID-19 not stopped things. This we feel would be a waste of council time and money already spent on this project. On a further note, the Little River Wairewa Community Trust has also secured some funding to go towards this project. However, that funding is only available in the 2020 financial year. Thank you for the time. I appreciate that this is going to be a long series for you guys. So, any questions?
Great, thanks Tori, and thanks for leaving time for some questions. Are there any questions for Tori? Jimmy.
Only one question regarding to your item 8, O'Kane's Bay potable water supply. Regarding the time frame, whether there's in response, or not, or can take the, 1 year, further delay.
So,
Yes.
if we delay it 1 year until next financial year, that means they start the consenting and engineering process next year, whereas we want to start the delivery of the project next year. So if we delay it, they've still got to then do the consenting and consultation and engineering next year, so it won't be delivered until the following year. So we were hoping to have the whole budget in for next year, but they still need to do that paperwork and that consenting process with ECAN prior to being shovel ready, as people call it.
So you mean that's a part or portion of the funding?
Yeah, no, not all the funding. We understand
Yeah.
why that the bulk of funding has been pushed out, but this is pushing out all funding, so they can't do their consenting, their engineering process. So that's what they need to be kept in, is just a small portion, so they can continue with the engineering and design.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Melanie.
I was just going to ask about that carry forward. So do we need, it won't just automatically roll over, it needs to be specifically carried over, the review panels, the design panels?
From what I understand, is that the whole lot has been stopped, so there's no carry forward. We're just asking for a small amount to be carried forward, because at the moment I think there was about $20,000 in that budget for the design and appearance panels. But we've been told that we can't carry anything forward, so we're just asking for a small portion of that to be carried forward so they can continue with these reviews throughout the year.
So did the 21,000 last year not all get used? Have I read that right?
Yeah, it didn't get used, and so that's why we're asking, please let us hold on to a small portion of carry forward.
That's number 9, is it?
Anne.
Thank you. Thanks, Tori. Just thinking about the water at O'Kane's Bay. In the meantime, are people at risk at all?
There is a great risk. There is notification everywhere saying boil water notice, but then again, does everybody know that you've got to boil water,
Right.
above 3 or 4 minutes? I mean, out of the Hawke's Bay inquiry,
Yes.
that came to us as a great concern,
Yes.
that not only the residents of O'Kane's Bay don't have potable water, but also the campground that can have up to 500 people, that is a council campground, on a boil water notice. Do we actually trust that they're going to boil water for long enough?
Right.
So there was the concern that came to the community board and from the community that is not, sorry, what's the word?
Protective enough.
Yeah, it's not good enough almost. It's,
No.
it's third world almost, but
It is.
we can't expect 500 campers to be able to boil water
Right.
for 5 minutes so they can make sure all the bugs are gone.
So short-term sort of remedies been investigated, for example, filters and that sort of thing?
I can't answer that. Staff
No.
would maybe be able to answer that, but I
Right.
know that they they are using stream water at the moment, but it is not treated. So that's the concern, that they're to get the treatment plant in there.
Okay, so it feels like something should be done in the meantime while things are
It's something
getting
that
sorted.
we'd have to ask
Yeah.
our staff more about.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Tim.
Tori, it's probably a no answer to this question, but it seems every time we get presentations from, especially Ekaroa, it seems 50-50 with regards to pro the cruise ships and tourism and anti-cruise ships and the tourism. And I'm just wondering, as a community board, working with your community, will there ever be a meeting of the ways? Because for me personally, I can see the value for the local businesses, and it's the same anywhere in New Zealand with regards to tourism. And a lot of the holiday makers, for instance, and I've talked to a couple who I know, and they'll bulk buy, say, at Super or Pack and Save here, go there for the weekend and just stay there, but actually not spend anything there. Because I kind of say to them, it's a bit unfair, but will there ever be a meeting of the ways?
That's where we want a sympathetic plan so that we can actually, one, understand the community needs, but also supply infrastructure that does frustrate not only the locals but also the tourists. So, for example, the toilets or the roading or anything like that does get put under strain when there is large amounts of people coming to the area. So we want a sympathetic approach. We want a holistic view, hence the management plan, not just a tourism strategy. Or we need to have a look at the whole thing. We need to have a look at, have we got room for extra cars? Have we got room for extra toilets, water supply, whatever? Because look at summer, we were down to level 4 water restrictions in Ekaroa. That doesn't help the people that come out to the beaches or the tourists coming along and flushing thousands and thousands of toilets.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
yeah, it's hard.
Thank you. Now that brings us to the end of the 10 minutes, so that's all that we've got time for. But Tori, thanks for the work you're doing. Thanks for the submission. Good to hear from you this morning. Thank you. So next we've got the Waipapa Papanui Innis Community Board and Chair Emma Norrish. Emma, good morning. Welcome to the table. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, I like that. Thanks, Pauline.
There's only one.
Morning. Thank you very much for having me along today. We have not yet submitted our revised written submission, so I'm going to talk to that submission, and you'll obviously receive it in the next few days. I'm going to make a few general comments before addressing the specific questions that were asked in the consultation material. First up, the board appreciates the financial challenges facing the council due to the impacts of COVID-19, and we understand the changes to the draft annual plan as a result. And we thank staff and councillors for the time and effort that's been put into amending the draft plan. We understand a decrease in levels of service will need to occur, but we're also wary of the fact that this must be weighed up against what our communities need. Our board would like to assist and support community collaboration and partnerships which help reduce operational costs of facilities for the council and also build capacity and wellbeing in the community. In particular, we'd like to highlight the following two things. You will probably all know about the new Kmart that has opened down Langdons Road in the Northlink commercial development. The board, we're very concerned about the changing traffic patterns around that new complex, and the board would like to encourage a conversation between staff and the developer of the shopping complex to address the traffic concerns and funding for the installation of traffic lights at the Greers Road, Langdons Road intersection. And the second thing is that the Northern Line cycleway safety issues, so that's at the crossing at Harewood Road and also there's a section of the cycleway which doesn't exist. The cycleway stops at Tuckers Road and then doesn't start again until Sturrock's Road. There's a grass verge along right beside the railway line which people use to walk and cycle down. We understand that the money for these projects have been pushed out due to slow negotiations with KiwiRail, but we request that if these negotiations can be restarted sooner, then the money should be brought forward to allow this important safety issue to be addressed. So now I'll move on to answering the questions in the draft plan. The rates, we agree that of the options offered, a 3.5% rates rise is the preferred option in the current environment. Our board supports the introduction of an excess water use targeted rate. We note the importance of the fact that there will be exemptions available for certain residents, and we also request that if this is introduced, that there be a public education campaign to support and educate people on the process for dealing with leaks and the like on their property that could contribute to that excess use. On the return to using glyphosate, our board supports this in part. We would like to see other methods of weed control continue to be used in our parks and glyphosate only used on roading. This approach would give some cost saving, which we understand the importance of, whilst protecting residents from perceived harm in parks and reserves. And then last but definitely by no means least, we are fully supportive of the one-off boost to the Strengthening Communities Fund. We know how important strong, healthy communities are to any recovery, and in our area we have groups doing amazing work, which is especially important at the moment, and who are facing challenges in funding. We request that if this extra funding is made available, then whether it be 5% or even maybe 10%, that it comes directly to community boards through our discretionary fund. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much indeed. So that leaves time for some questions. Jake.
Hey, Emma, thanks for that. Hey, just really interested in your use of the word perceived harm when it comes to glyphosate. What do you mean by that?
That's going on. The public obviously perceives that there is harm in using it.
But what's your sort of personal view?
I'm not giving my personal view because I'm talking on behalf of the board.
Thank you. Yanni, Sam and Mike.
Thank you. Just in terms of that Langdons Road traffic and traffic lights, is that part of the consent conditions?
Under the consent conditions, the developer has to put lights in under phase 3. The Kmart bit that is just opened is phase 2. So there's phase 3 here that hasn't even been started yet.
Right. So have you asked our consenting staff to review the consent conditions?
We've asked staff to look into that at the moment. Yeah.
Cool. Great.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. Just in terms of the additional community funding, did you have a view on, would you just want the current formula distributed again, or did you want an even share of it? Just be interested in thoughts.
Our board is keen on having the formula looked at again.
As part of the annual plan, or
if possible.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Thank you, and Mike.
Thank you. Just quickly to clarify the development down in Langdons Road, it's actually not the developer that has to do it at the moment. It's basically they cannot do the stage 3, open the stage 3 part of the development until lights are actually in that intersection. So it's about having a conversation with the developer, actually seeing if we can actually get them to fund it. So there's a conversation that needs to happen there. The other thing, which is slightly news to me, that glyphosate acceptable to use in the transport space. Is there concern though that glyphosate would actually get into the waterways if we're using it on the roads, and does that not concern the board?
I guess it would, yeah.
To clarify that, our staff have told us that the glyphosate, organic products cannot be used in waterways. Mm-hmm. They're worse, which is quite bizarre. So, yeah.
We've still got to keep looking at better options.
All right, are there any further questions for Emma? All right, so Emma, thanks very much indeed for your time this morning. Thanks for joining us. Thank you. So moving on next to the Waimaro, Fendleton, Waimari, the Waitai Coastal Burwood Community Board. Chair Kelly Barber and Bibi Frail, good to have you with us this morning as well.
Fight, yeah.
We got him first.
Yeah, we're scrappier than Pendleton.
Yeah, so as Andrew mentioned, the Waitai Coastal Burwood Community Board has a submissions chair, which is Bibi Fraley, who is on the community board for Burwood. But I'll just read an opening statement. So, Waitai Coastal Burwood Community Board would like to highlight our gratitude to the Mayor and City Councillors and Chief Executive, the Christchurch City Council staff and all the contractors who have contributed to the delivery of a wonderful array of recently completed assets in our area. The renewal of New Brighton in particular has taken a number of giant leaps forward, and with the completion of the revamped children's playground, the fantastic new Heipuna Taimawana saltwater hot pools, which are overprescribed just about every day at the moment, and the restoration of the New Brighton Clock Tower, with the New Brighton streetscaping almost completed, the rebuild of 2 local surf clubs underway, and the Red Zone regeneration team about to launch into life. There's a lot to be grateful for, and we're excited about the days ahead. We would particularly like to thank the Mayor for, during the election campaign, highlighting her desire to see a renewed emphasis on fixing Christchurch's eastern suburbs. We feel that this has started in earnest, but it is important that the COVID recovery plan doesn't overtake our long-awaited earthquake recovery. However, we acknowledge the current financial situation that the Council finds itself in with the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact that this has had on the annual plan. As a result, we have made adjustments to our submission that reflect the need for financial prudence in the coming financial year. So, Phoebe.
Thanks. So I'm going to take the submission as read, but I'm happy to dig into any of the detail as we go. And I know that we understand around this table that our wards were the hardest hit by the earthquakes, the slowest to recover from them, and most of what our submission contains relates to the ongoing recovery and the need to address our earthquake legacy issues. So upon forming, our fairly new board quickly agreed that one of our central focus points was to improve the visual amenity of our wards. Beautifying seems like a nice to have when there's a lot else going on, but we know that it speaks to the psyche of our community. It's really hard to move on from what happened in our areas unless the physical appearance of our wards change. And 10 years on, we still have broken roads and shabby footpaths and temporary stop banks that don't seem to go very fast. And we understand that given the situation we're in, we can't expect to see an increase in levels of service in our area, but we would be very disappointed to see a decrease in the levels of service. It feels like we're just maintaining the status quo, and we don't want to lose that. And of course, we're encouraging our ward constituents to get in and make sure that they do the tidy up that they feel is needed also. You know, pick up rubbish when they see it, for example. The next thing to highlight is our disappointment that the Pages Road Bridge renewal will be deferred. This bridge is a gateway to Brighton, where Council has spent a lot of money recently, as Kelly has noted, on our beautiful assets, and we need all of Christchurch to support those assets for them to be successful. We want visitors to be wowed when they arrive in New Brighton, and at the moment the bridge and the roads into New Brighton are really underwhelming and they look really shabby. So we agreed that the Pages Road Bridge needs to be completed and the roads in need to be completed as a matter of urgency. I just want to touch briefly on Brooklands. I recently attended a public meeting out at Brooklands with Regenerate Christchurch, and I was really moved to listen to the locals speaking. I had no understanding previously of the issues that they were facing, and I still don't have a deep understanding of that. But I know I don't understand how we found ourselves in this situation in Brooklyn, but I don't think it's good enough. We haven't done the right thing by those locals, and we need to. I know that Council are working with locals to do basic remediation there, and that soon Council will become the red zone land owner in that area in the next couple of weeks. But so much more is needed in this area. There's no money allocated to the work that needs to be done, and it needs to happen. The final area I want to highlight is New Brighton. So we've mentioned development contributions in our submission, and I hope Council will take this suggestion seriously. Like Brooklands, Brighton has waited an unacceptably long time to have its earthquake legacy issues addressed. I know the issues are complex. I do understand how complex they are, but 10 years is too long. And I'm really pleased to see that council staff has picked up the South Shore, South New Brighton legacy project from Regenerate Christchurch. They've been working really hard and quite fast, I think. They're making good progress and they are bringing the community along. So I'm really glad to see that that work is starting. But I would say that there's no point in engaging with a community and planning projects if the projects don't have any funding attached to them. These are not nice to haves, these are must do's. The money for the work should be in the annual plan. We haven't asked for that because of the situation we find ourselves in. But as soon as the work is planned, it should be started and the money needs to be found for this. The final point I'd make is that our board would not like to see the COVID-19 recovery be prioritised over finishing our earthquake recovery work. These communities have waited too long already, and let's not make them wait any longer. Time for questions.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Jimmy.
Regarding to Brookland, you recommend, the council might consider 200K on the annual plan. I'm not sure, but if in your word, you advertise whether have any other, the items can be, it's less per advertise to kind of to trade off, etc., or not.
I think what you're asking is, can we move money from elsewhere to cover the cost of this? No.
200K, yeah. I mean, then you will kind of increase the operating cost, am I right? You put into annual plan, 200K.
Long-term plan.
Or long-term plan.
Yeah.
It's not an annual plan.
We moved it out of that. We asked for it in the annual plan, but we revised our submission and asked for it to be included in that long-term plan.
Oh, long-term plan. Okay, thank you.
Given that the planning work is underway at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Pauline.
I'm looking at your comments on the excess water use charge for households.
Yeah.
And trying to actually ascertain whether you're actually supportive of that or not. Maybe it was
Good question, Paul.
But do you appreciate the fact that it's going to be very, very difficult for a domestic user to trigger that excess level anyway?
Yes.
And the consultation documents got really well presented diagram, and that might not have been out when you made your submission.
It was. We referred to it when we had our discussion. So what it says there is we accept the need for it, and we also did discuss the fact that it's aimed at targeting high users, and it will do that, and that actually from a sustainability point of view that's not a bad thing to have happen. But there's a concern that you start with a cap that's quite high, but it's very easy just to reduce that cap over time so more people pay, because it becomes a source of revenue for the council, and the temptation to do that would be quite high in a difficult financial situation.
Yeah, so that's your main concern, even though there is a cap now.
Yeah, that it can be
has been
changed
for a long time.
Once you introduce something like this, it's kind of opening Pandora's box.
Yeah, that's your main concern, but
Yeah.
apart from that, you're supportive of actually encouraging people to respect
I think what we
the
say
resource.
is that we accept the need for it.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, Leanne.
Just the Brooklands issue. So, because obviously I share your concerns, having been the representative for the area when the earthquakes happened. They are residential red zone though, and so they don't actually transfer to the council. The land doesn't transfer to the council till 1 July.
Yes.
So, and until 1 July, the only party that can promote a regeneration plan is Regenerate Christchurch. That will change with the law that's passing through Parliament at the moment. So I think that what you're asking for is just really a small contribution towards the cost of community-led regeneration planning.
Yes.
That will be enabled under the legislation transfer to the Christchurch City Council on 1 July. So that's the context for your request,
Yes.
is that we haven't been in a position to do regeneration planning in this area. We will pick up that ability on 1 July, And if we don't put some money on budget, just a small amount, just to get the community understanding that the planning tools are available really for another year under a regeneration plan, then that opportunity will go by, without us. So, I mean, obviously there's some money coming back from Regen Christchurch, so is this an area where it
If
could
money
be
can
allocated?
be found elsewhere, that would be ideal. Yeah, and acknowledging that staff are already actively working in that area
now.
now.
I think that that's been well received by the community, sort of at last.
Yes, exactly.
So, thanks, Bibi. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now that brings us to the end of the allotted time. Thank you very much indeed for the submission and for the work that you're doing. Thanks for joining us. I'm aware that there were a couple of people who had questions that we didn't have the opportunity to get to. What I'm trying to do is to share the question time equally among people, given that we've got a short period of time for asking questions. So I'm tending to go for people that haven't asked a question yet if people are indicating questions. Okay, so now we come to the Waimaro Fendleton Waimari Harewood Community Board. Chair David Cartwright and Bridget Williams as well. Good to see both of you this morning. We look forward to hearing your verbal submission.
Thank you very much. It's a similar process. Our board had a submissions committee that Bridget chaired. I'll address our submission first, and between Bridget and ourselves we'll be able to answer questions at the end. Look, I'm not here to read our submission to you verbatim. You can all read that yourselves. But there are several points I wish to address. First of all, the board does acknowledge the hard work that the councillors, the staff, the chief executive have all done on bringing us to a point of reviewing the proposed plan, etc. A lot of hard work, but actually the journey has only just begun. The effects of COVID-19 and the downturn in the economy will be with us for some time. The board does note that the Christchurch City Council and its residents face an uncertain financial times going forward, and we wish to express our disappointment that a zero increase was not put forward or presented as an option. The Community Board supports and encourages proactive fiscal prudence at this time going forward, and still believes a zero rates increase could have been achieved. Our Community Board does not seek any additional increases in operational or capital spend going forward, or for this year. One of the other, just regarding the points for the targeted water increase, we're neutral to positive on that. We do, however, want to raise the concern that many properties within Christchurch work off 1 metre. So there might be 2 or 3 households off one, so that is something that would need to be addressed prior to any levy or fee being brought in. Glyphosate, we're happy with the use of that to save money, although we have had an issue raised in our ward where a park was sprayed at about 2:45 before school broke out next door. So we do ask that through an operational policy that the timing of the use of it in our parks is in a sensible way, or not directly before school breaks out. The one-off increase to the Strengthening Communities Fund, I ask that common sense prevails. The COVID-19 has uniformly affected New Zealand. It should not be prorated on any other formula than residence-based or population-based. Level or impact of service. We are obviously very aware that everything in the city will change. However, we don't want that to be an excuse for not delivering. My feeling is, or our feeling is, that that could become a very common excuse that for not doing something, it's just blamed on, oh, well, there's a cutback on the city. We're not doing that. And it becomes an apathy amongst a number of people. So we're very concerned and ask the Chief Executive to be cautious of that. We ask the Council to embrace new technologies and to not be afraid to re-look at things. We give the example of the big belly bins, and we'll all know in business, in the world of business, the example of the NASA pen, where they spent $1 million designing a pen to work in space, where the Russians just took a pencil. So let's just use our Kiwi ingenuity and do things properly. I'd also like to reiterate the point that was made earlier around setting clear expectations. We've had examples in our city where we do master plans, but we have no money to back it up. The messaging from around this table and from this chamber has to actually be very clear, very honest, and very balanced. We have to ensure that our residents know and understand what our limitations are, and without that, we are failing our communities. I also ask that the Chief Executive have a strict and have a very stern look at our procurement practices. We've had examples, recent examples in our community board where things have been designed, changed, designed again, changed, and designed again and changed. And it's a waste of council money, it's a waste of time, and it just frustrates our residents. It's not acceptable, and we ask that that is given a business lens, to use that term. I'll leave it at that. I'm happy to answer questions.
Great, thank you for leaving time for some questions. So we've got Anne and then Pauline. Anne.
Thank you for that. So you're requesting, you're not supportive of zero, you are supportive of a zero rates increase.
Yes.
And you're also seeing that the current financial situation isn't an excuse for not providing quality service. They seem to be a little bit mutually exclusive, and I'm just wondering if you've got thoughts about how the organisation could deal with that.
Okay, I'll give you an example. So outside our golden child of the River City Market, you can go out there on a Sunday afternoon and you can see the rubbish bins overloaded with rubbish not being emptied. And I have seen and taken photos and put requests for service in for those to be done on a regular basis. Now, are they not being emptied because the guy driving the truck can't be bothered or he's gone for smoko early? Who would know? Or are they because we should actually just be installing another rubbish bin there, or a bigger rubbish bin? I don't know. But that is, if our residents go around and see rubbish bins or parks not cut, or the grass is not cut, or weeds not pulled, or whatever the example is, and just go, or our messaging is, well, we're not doing that because there's a cutback. Where actually it was just the incompetence of a person not doing it, then that is the risk that I see, that it becomes an extreme negative for our council and that we do not deliver on what we're saying we've got to do. So we've got to be very careful, very mindful, and approach it in a cautious way to ensure that what we say we're going to do, we do, and we have the strong vigour and to be able to deliver it.
Thank you. Pauline.
Oh, yes, I just wanted to come back to your comments on glyphosate, and you support the cessation of the organic.
Yes, I support saving money for our city.
And you support returning to glyphosate, and yet you also say that we recommend you don't spray it around parks where school children are coming out at the same time. Is that because you recognise there's an adverse health effect?
No,
glyphosate?
I recognise that the community, or some of our community, believe there's information out there that it has a harmful effect, and so let's work with them and put the spraying timetable at a period of time that does not work into their fears.
Right, just in case there is some truth
if they
in
have
that.
those fears, let's work with them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, and then I've got Mike and Sam if there's time. Sarah.
Thank you. I'm just to note the desire for sort of the low rates and the no additional spend in your area, and yet you have asked for some enhanced sort of rubbish collection and those kind of operational expenditure and better ways of doing those, like the big belly bins and things, which do cost more and operational to install and more outside the fish and chip shop and those kind of things. So that actually increases our operational spending.
If you've got one rubbish bin that has a capacity of, let's say, 100 litres versus a rubbish bin that's 50 litres, and you're having to have a person go and empty it twice, surely the labour to empty a rubbish bin twice is twice as much. Yes, there might be it might be a capital spend to put a larger rubbish bin in, but if the operational costs can be driven down, if there are some efficiencies and some efficiencies that can be driven through the organisation, then that's what we're asking.
Yeah.
the
So it's
Chief
okay
Executive
to
have a look at.
invest a little bit more
Smarter, not harder.
upfront to be
Smarter.
able to make some efficiencies and savings going forward.
I beg your pardon?
Sorry, it's okay to invest a little bit more upfront
Yeah,
to make sure things are a bit more.
If there is a means of a long-term availability of doing it, yes, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Thank you. That leaves time for one very quick question, very quick answer. Mike.
It should be quick. I just read through your paragraphs about strengthening communities funds, but you don't actually say if you support increasing it.
Well, it's obviously $300,000 that the council's got to find from somewhere.
Yeah, I know, but
I
do you
support the fact that there are organisations within the community.
No, that's not. I'm not. Do you support council doing a 5% increase in that fund? I can ask Bridget actually. Bridget, do you support?
Yes, we do support. We do support it, but obviously, just looking at it from a lens that COVID-19 has affected everyone, so we just ask that it is distributed in that fair manner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning. Thanks for the submission.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right, so now moving to the Waipuna Hallswell Hornby Riccarton Community Board and Chairperson Mike Mora. Mike, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the table.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and let you know what's happened post-COVID, and we do appreciate the fact that we're in different times and we've got to review everything. So we appreciate the work that the council's already done on the draft revised annual plan. So it's been very, very difficult for you, and just really appreciate the work that's gone in so far. So our submission, I'm not going to read it, but the Hornby Centre, of course, is our priority. We've been waiting for that for a long time, and we think it should be underway now, to be honest. But anyway, we just don't want any hold up in that. So we would really appreciate the support of if the councillors around the table to say, hey, listen, we've been wanting this for many, many years and it's shovel ready, let's do it. Bradshaw Terrace is a small, I don't want to dwell on this too much longer either, but it's just a small remnant of some work that was done in Riccarton back in the days, really, of the just about the swap over from amalgamation when some streets were upgraded, but this section of Bradshaw Terrace hasn't been done. So it's something that we've been going on about as a board for quite a number of years. You'll see the comments that we've made when you read our submission about it, so I don't want to dwell on that much, other than it's something that our submissions committee felt that we should draw to your attention again. And the major cycle routes, we're pleased that that's planned and underway, but we've got some alarm bells ringing in some parts of it. And we just want to say, let's talk about this, let's sort it out so that once it's done right. And since we had the on-site meeting, there's been some other information that's came forward as well about property in that Gilberthorpe's Waterloo Parker Street intersection that I've alerted staff to say, hey, listen, there could be some possibilities here. So what we're wanting is the consultation to happen and the people to get around the table and sort things out. So do it once, do it right. So that's sorry, that's the message on that one. Interesting, when you read the reports on the cycleway, the consultants' reports, safety is not really mentioned, and there's no sort of safety audits done on any of the intersections through the cycleway system. So that's something that it was brought to my attention, but I think it's something that we need to be aware of, that they've looked at the routes, but not necessarily the safety aspects of it. So please, I'm asking that we have the consultation in these areas that that we've mentioned in our submission, and do it once and do it right. So other than that, we're all good with that. Rates, we congratulate the council on on the work that you've done on the options, and we support our submissions committee support the option 1, the 3.5. So we're sympathetic to the call of residents for lower rates and 0, but the reality of it is you've got to make some hard decisions. And so anyway, recognising the fact that people are struggling and knowing that, but our submissions committee are saying we're going to support option 1. The uniform annual charge, we don't agree with, our board, and think it should be scrapped, because it's a fee per property. So somebody that's got a property that's worth $1 million pays the same uniform annual charge as somebody that's got a property worth $350,000. So we think it's better off really if you just go on the value base of your property and do away with that uniform annual charge. Previous councils have looked at this over a number of years, and I think it's time that we actually look at scrapping it altogether. Well, I'm not saying that's what I think. This is what our submissions committee thinks. So that's something that we'd like consideration to be given to. The excess water use charges for households. Our board is opposed to that through the annual plan process. So that's quite a signal from the submissions committee that we're opposed to that. We think it's probably going to cost more to actually administer than it is to what you're getting revenue from. But anyway, education is a thing. And yeah, dob thy neighbour. If you see somebody going to work and they've got their sprinkler going on their front lawn or their back lawn all day and they turn it off when they come home at night, well, I think that's something that people should, all over the city, should take some responsibility and dob thy neighbour, rather than have somebody running around the country, the city, reading meters. So the Hallsville summer pool, we were extended the hours, so we just want to. We haven't had a good feedback of the analysis of the usage of that yet, but what we're saying is, please be a bit more flexible with swimming pool hours, and for the oncoming summer season. So you'll read that in the submission. The former Sockburn Service Centre site is an eyesore, and I know this council have been on to private owners of earthquake buildings within the CBD to say, hey, listen, get this building down, clean it up. But we, as a council, have got one sitting there at Sockburn that's an eyesore and a reminder of the earthquakes, and it's just boarded up and it just looks a mess. And please, please, please do something about it. The Upper Ricketton War Memorial Library is another one that's been fenced off and nothing's been happening about it, so that's something that our submissions committee felt that there should be some action on. There are some ideas around. The council own the land. It's been run by a trust. But anyway, it's sad when a war memorial has actually got to go, but we just don't want it sitting there year after year after year. Andrew and councillors. Hallsville Junction Road extension. This is another one that our board have been constantly submitting on every annual plan to get this done. As you know, Hallsville Junction Road starts in Pound Road now, and it ends in Hallsville, but it's got this crazy little kink bit in the middle, and there's been money in the budget. The Waterloo Business Park offered $1 million as well to help fund that, but because it didn't progress in time, that we've lost that. But anyway, please take the stupid kink out of Hallsville Junction Road so it can actually operate efficiently. So that's another plea, and we've been consistent about this, councillors, for year after year after year. It's just administrative hold-ups that's caused the problem. Not the will of the council to actually council laws to fund it. That's always been there. It's just the way the process has been handled that's taken it so long, so we don't want it to drop off the radar. We do appreciate the boost of the Strengthening Communities Fund. We think that's really good, and we do make sure that that's spent wisely, because we do rely on all those community groups and organisations in our community and in our city to actually deliver a lot of services that if they weren't there doing it and nobody was doing it, Christchurch wouldn't be the place it is. So we've really got to support those groups and organisations who mean so much. The volunteer hours that the people put into our city is, oh look, I'm running out of time. Stormwater retention detention systems. We've got some massive ones. When you have a look at the budget, it's huge. Please don't cut the budget for our stormwater retention detention systems. Central City parking charges, library charges we've got there, swimming pool fees, and sorry I've been rambling on a bit, but that's it from me.
So that does bring us to the end of the 10
Yes,
minutes.
it does.
I'm assuming that when we get your written submission, that will include all of the things that you've mentioned this morning.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us, Mike. You unfortunately haven't left us any time for questions, and we look forward to receiving your written submission. Thank you.
You very much, team.
All right, so moving swiftly on to the Waikora Linwood Central Heathcote Community Board and Chair Alexandra Davids. Alexandra, thanks for joining us. Good to see you. Look forward to hearing what you've got to present to us this morning.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou. I want to thank you all on behalf of the Waikora Linwood Central Heathcote Community Board for giving us the opportunity to be heard today, and also thank you for your time. At this time of uncertainty across the world, the board appreciates the time and effort put into pulling together this updated draft annual plan. As we don't have a huge amount of time this morning, I would like to take the board's submission as read, and I will speak to a few points, then leave time for any questions. The first point I would like to speak to today is the excess water use charges. While the board understands the current reasoning for this, they want to state the importance of it not setting a precedent. Speaking on behalf of a number of our communities, we have concerns this water delivery charge will negatively impact on some of our area's most vulnerable, lower socioeconomic households. Due to either cultural or economic reasons, these can be larger households requiring higher water use. The board would also like to add that many of our households in our area, due to the location, have much sandier soils and can require a lot more water for both gardens and food resilience means. The board would like to show support for a one-off payment to the Strengthening Communities Fund. We want to acknowledge the extra challenges that are being faced by our grassroots community organisations, especially when community needs are so high in our current climate. In regards to reductions in maintenance work and delayed renewal programs, the board raises a concern around the potential for limited opportunities for community discussion around the impact of the proposed reductions. The board asks that the council seriously consider how it will communicate effectively with all communities. We would also like to suggest the community board has more involvement prior to planning in order for us to help in the process and allow meaningful and realistic engagement with residents. In regards to the capital program, the board would like to say a huge thank you for the Linwood Pool Te Pou Toitoi. Having investment in this area is so important to this community, and you have many thankful and excited humans awaiting this development. Our sod turning is on Wednesday, and we're expecting a great turnout. We also thank the council for the work on the Linwood Village streetscape in the near future. This will enable this community to finally start progressing after it was ravaged by the quakes. In regards to Lancaster Park, the board support this work being continued, along with ongoing community involvement. This green space will be an invaluable area for the immediate community and surrounding communities from around the city. There are, of course, a number of projects we are signalling for the long-term plan. Some of these include the Greening of the East pilot project, the Apawaho to Ihutai project, the Linwood Park development plan, and improving Bromley's roads, parks and infrastructure. Just thank you again for your time, and if anybody has any questions.
Thank you very much. So in paragraph 2.3, you talk about the capital programme and the renewal programmes and reduction in maintenance work. You talk about how we should communicate. Does the board agree or disagree or have any view on what's proposed, rather than just the way we communicate that?
It is just really in the way that we communicate it. We understand that we do need to look at how we move forward in this time with lack of finances. But I think from the survey that was done in relation to how people really felt like they were heard from council, I think that if we actually start communicating better with our constituents and residents, then we will actually have more buy-in and people will understand the issues that we'll be facing.
Great, thank you. Any further questions? Jimmy?
That's one question. In particular, you raised the issue for all those access, the water use, the charge. You support in principle, but you still concerned probably in your work, probably more the percentage of low socio-economic household, even many the household, etc. But how to mitigate this effect? Do you have any recommendation to the council?
I guess that from the board's perspective, we're really just pointing out the fact that there are going to be issues, we believe, within those families that do have more people within their households. We don't have the answers around how we can mitigate that, but we would just like council to be aware that if we are going to be affecting families now, we'd like to see some work done around that to, if it is going to carry on into the future, to actually look after those families when they're already struggling.
Thank you.
Thank you. Melanie?
You've got the Lancaster Park War Memorial Gates. Has the board had any information about how much money that might require?
Yanni?
No, we've had nothing.
No.
It's been raised at informal, it's raised through CCC. I mean, yeah, nothing.
No.
In fact, the council is supposed to get the report from the last annual plan on the board.
So we've got people making notes as we go through the questions and answers and the submissions, so it can be picked up.
So if we could get that information, that would be great.
Thank you. Anne and then Pauline. Anne.
Thank you. Hi, Alexander.
Hi.
Hi. You're the second board that's actually mentioned wanting to consider using DCs in the local area, that they're collected, and particularly in your space, you've got the, the infill kind of residential development. Mm-hmm. How do you see the DCs could be used, and in what way would they be effective?
I believe that there are different ways that they could be used within the communities, but I think in order to get something that's really truly effective for communities, it would actually be asking those communities that the DCs are in what they believe would make their area better. We know that greenscaping is something that's needed within a lot of these higher development areas as well.
So I know that that is something that communities are kind of crying out for. So we haven't, or personally, and on behalf of the board, I don't believe that these communities have actually been spoken to, but I could be wrong. So.
Thank you. Pauline, and then I've got James.
Yeah,
Pauline.
look, thanks, Alex. I just actually wanted to address the volumetric excess water charging thing and your concern about families who may have a lot of people in the home and they may use a lot of water. And we've been assured that no domestic use will ever trigger the excess charge. And even if they did, just know by showering and using household use, and even if they did, there are exemptions that they can apply for. So I just wanted to let you know that because you'll be going out talking to people, and it might be good to have that shared with them.
Thank you.
And I think that's the only reason that I personally have looked at, supporting this to go out for consultation, knowing that it's not going to affect people's household use.
Cool.
All right, James, and then I've got Jake if there's time. James.
Kia ora, Alexandra. The current draft annual budget or plan has funding for the estuary edge, also known as the walkway around the side of the estuary, right, between the ponds. Is your board supportive of that?
That's not something we have discussed in this draft annual plan. It is something we have discussed in prior years, and I believe we have been supportive of that, yes.
And where it is now, where it's been proposed?
Yes.
Okay.
We haven't had discussions for a long time about that, though.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And that leaves time for one quick question and answer from Jake. You all right? All right, thank you. All right, Alex, thanks very much indeed for the presentation this morning.
Thank you.
And for the submission. Thanks very much
Thanks
indeed.
much.
Thank you. So then that moves us to the last of the Community Board heard submissions this morning, the Waihoro, Spraden Cashmere Community Board, and Chair Carolyn Potter. Good to see you this morning. Welcome to the table.
Thank you, Andrew. Kia ora tātou. Lee Sampson apologises for not being here. He actually chaired the annual plan submission meeting and in my absence, and so it would have been good if he had been here. The board, our board, as usual, as it has done for the last 5 years, recognises the financial constrictions the council is under and is not seeking a huge additional expenditure for our wards. And our submission to you is made with this in mind. Disability access. We set out in our annual plan submission some principles that concerns our board and underlines all projects the way we approach all projects. I'm extremely disappointed with the council's response on disability access and have been increasingly so. We fought for years to have disability as one of the criteria for which a project would have to make a comment on when it came to us or the council. It was changed to accessibility and it's meaningless, absolutely meaningless. None of you seeing accessibility on a project and the staff's comments would ever question it and have ever questioned it, thinking that it must be about disability. But it is. It's meant to be about disability access, so that we have buildings and structures that are built that don't even comply with the outdated Building Standards Act. And it's extraordinarily disappointing. This is a Liberal council. This is a council that represents its people, and it should be taking care and notice of some of the people who are our most vulnerable. Disability isn't about the impairment. It isn't about what they can't do. It is about loneliness. And Punawai, the sports arena, was built so that people with disabilities could not sit with other people to watch sport. Built with that. I don't know whether, of course it wasn't intended, but that's what happens. So I'd really like this council, within the constraints of its financial limitations, this year and next year and onwards, to be considering all projects with disability access in mind. It's not hard, it's easy. And even attending to the Building Standards Act would be a head start. and particularly with some of the buildings that we're already building which don't comply. Cycleways. This board, our board, has always been an enthusiastic supporter of cycleways, and we've seen the benefits in our wards. One of our schools, Beckenham, claims to have the biggest number of people per head of population on cycles. We have seen the benefits. If we look on Sparks Road, we see people striding down Sparks Road with their kids on cycles in the cycleway. And we can only support the extension of the cycleways and believe that it will be part of the public transport systems that will mean we have fewer cars on the roads. Water. I thank you, Pauline, for making it clear. Our board had a concern about supercharges for those people who had larger needs for water domestically, and your reassurances means that our board probably will not be opposed to water allocations, provided that the water is also allocated not on who pays the most rates. Our board is we do not support households receiving a larger water allowance due to higher rates. We support the 5% increase proposed for strengthening communities funding. We applaud the council for putting this proposal forward. We have a strong not-for-profit sector in our 2 wards, and we have a higher than average older persons population. We could not do it. We could not live it without the support of the not-for-profit sector. And we are grateful if the council manages to pursue this path of a 5% increase for strengthening communities. We are delighted that we will be able to say to some of our people who work so hard in the community that they won't be penalised this year, and that they might even see $1 or $2 extra. Road safety and travel efficiency improvements for Dyers Pass Road, Hexhorn Road, Barrington Street and Cashmere Road environs. We have several intersections that are in dire need of improvement, and you will have seen the headlines in the paper this last fortnight or so about the need on Dyers Pass Road and so on, and also the antisocial behaviour on the hills. We would like the allocation that is allowed for roading improvements to be strengthened in terms of pedestrian facilities. Our footpaths are appalling. We build them so that cars can cross safely. We do not build them for pedestrians. And so we've got dips in our footpaths like this so that cars can get across them without hurting themselves. We would have very much appreciated if people could look at the allocation that has been made for roading and pedestrian and footpaths with an intention of increasing that funding that is allowed for footpaths. There are a lot of people having accidents on our footpaths that are still not repaired after the earthquake. Toilet renewals. Several of our parks have got exactly the same toilets with exactly the same age that are frankly disgusting. We support the Barrington Park improvement if that goes ahead. Adult recreation. You will know that I have pursued the idea of an adult playground for many years. I think if we suddenly won lotto and burst into a Margaret Mayhew for adults, there would be huge benefits in our community. I acknowledge the budget restraints, but hope that they could put in facilities for adults in terms of strengthening their strengthening equipment, playground equipment for adults, and portable libraries, speakers' corners, music, and rock climbing that would enable people to pretend that they were going there for fitness but were really going there for companionship and a reduction of loneliness. I think an adults playground would be the first in New Zealand. They've got them overseas, they've got them in the UK, they've got them in Europe and China. I think an adults playground would be a sparkling example to set the whole of New Zealand. And we have our priority projects that have been laid out there. There is one that has had a demise. Centennial Hall has been excluded from the budget. We were intending to suggest that that which was allocated for Centennial Hall transfer to 19 Huhay Road, which is the old children's library. We would like to see that to become a children's facility. We found out the other day that a preschool that has been there for so long we did not know it is in a community hall that was intended to be a community centre for Huhay. Huhay does not have a community centre. The children's library only needs a small amount of finance to update it and make it something that would enhance our community. In terms of bus lanes, and particularly Lincoln Road going through Addington, we understand it's a metropolitan project but wish to be involved all the way through. Personally, I'd like to see the evidence from Papanui and Sydenham bus lanes as to the importance and impact of bus lanes. I've never seen any evidence as to their worth. I think it's pretty old school traffic engineering, to tell you the truth, but our board supports it, but would not oppose a postponement of that funding for that project and that project not being initiated immediately. That's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Melanie.
Nothing tricky, Melanie. I'm fragile.
The Cashmere Hoonhay Worsley's project has been delayed for another year, which neither me or Tim noticed at the time.
I didn't. I thought it was starting in the spring.
So we're wondering if you had a comment on that.
Yes, sorry, I should have commented on that. That's dangerous, that intersection. It's wildly dangerous. It includes an enormous number of bikes going to the adventure park. It includes an enormous number of trucks and traffic for the development that's being pursued up there, which will include 300 houses. It's a terrible intersection. It's dangerous and it causes near misses every single day, and the fact that it's been postponed is wrong. It's just wrong. And it will have an impact on the local community, where it will have resulting accidents because of that delay.
All right.
And I wasn't aware of it, and I apologise. In the proposed annual plan, it said starting this spring.
That would have been the original one.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning and for the verbal submission and the written submission as well. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. So that brings us quite neatly and in fact 1 minute ahead of time to the morning tea break. We start again at 11 o'clock. And if I can ask that people are in their seats ready to start at 11, we've got a number of submissions to hear in the next period starting at 11 o'clock. So I'll adjourn the meeting till 11. Thank you.
So the gold jubilee. Yeah. So because of course he had to take the answers and I could see it. So I wrote the status of the station. And that's fine. But I went into the other room and I was really afterwards. And I had one bite of the sandwich and my husband came in and explained to us what's going on. And I said, I'm sorry, I said to you, I was first about that.
All right, so let's start with this morning's second half. And Alexandra Davids and Linda Keel from Keep Christchurch Beautiful. If I can ask you to come to the table to present to us. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou again. I have Linda Keel with me, who is our coordinator from Keep Christchurch Beautiful, and we just want to thank the council for hearing us today and sharing some time with us. Keep Christchurch Beautiful is making this submission to be part of the conversation around Christchurch continuing regeneration and re-emergence as a significant, vibrant and future-focused city. Post-lockdown, we asked the council to remember the importance of voluntary organisations and groups that have made and continue to make a valuable contribution to the greater good of our city. Keep Christchurch Beautiful support an increase in the Strengthening Communities funding and acknowledge the extra challenges being faced by grassroots community organisations in post-COVID times. Linda is just going to go through a couple of things that we are currently doing within Keep Christchurch Beautiful and what we hope to expand on, and I will finish off with a few comments, and then if there's any questions we'll go there too.
Kia ora, I'm Linda. Thank you for having us. It's a privilege to be able to come in and share in some of these decision-making forums. I've been the part-time administrator for Keep Christchurch Beautiful for over 10 years now, and it's been a fascinating time. As you know, Keep Christchurch Beautiful has been around in Christchurch, originally under the umbrella of council and now independent, for well over 30 years, and I see lots of faces that we've had workings with and combined with over the years. Some of the current programs we're running at the moment, and I just sort of want to let you know about the sort of breadth of things we're doing. We run a schools program. We usually have about 40 schools of the roughly 110 primary and intermediate schools in Christchurch enrolled every year. Not the same 40, many are regular, but we have new ones come on every year. That is about recognising the cool, brilliant stuff that schools do for their environments and acknowledging that, rather than putting a big set of criteria that they have to measure up to, and schools really value it. We run clean-up events, both our own events and supporting other community events such as the Mother of All Cleanups, which is run by the Rivers Networks in May. We promote and support the Keep New Zealand Beautiful big national clean-up week in September, and we run our own event for that. We're really keen to talk to community boards about doing more in local areas, because we know that there are lots of little places that just need a little bit of care and attention. We also support volunteers who are doing good things in the community. I had a contact just yesterday about someone in Huntsbury Hill who walks every day and picks up rubbish, and we've given them some supplies to help them do that, and we hope to acknowledge them in other ways later. We also recognise and support volunteers with our community awards ceremony, which is really valuable. Volunteers are amazingly humble people, and they come along and they say, well, I haven't been doing much, but that person over there, they're amazing. But recognising and acknowledging them makes a huge difference and gives them a chance to get together. In all our dealings with the public, of which there are many, we try really hard to advocate for council and council's position. So I spend a lot of time talking to people, and when they say, oh, why don't they do this, do that, plant roses in the roundabouts, I try and say, yes, they can't do everything, we all need to do some as well. So together we can do everything, but they can't do it all. So we try and advocate because we think it's a difficult position. We're well recognised around the community. We share the same branding as our parent, Keep New Zealand Beautiful. We're a branch, although we're independent, and I think that recognition helps. It's a very community-focused and well-thought-of organisation. We do public education. We visit residents groups and walking groups and yoga groups and any group that invites us. We promote all the Keep New Zealand Beautiful initiatives. There are lots of them, and we managed to win a Kiwi's Choice Award in their national awards in 2018 for the Margaret Mayhew Playground. We're very proud of that. And we're also very grateful and proud to have received a Civic Award from this council in December 2019. That was an amazing honour, and we're very chuffed. There are things we'd like to do more of or expand. I was invited to a kindergarten for the first time last year and scaled down our schools program to do a little program for them, and there's a huge number of preschools in the city that we would like to be able to start getting into and working with. They're doing brilliant things and they're very keen. The Chorus Cabinet Murals program with Chorus and Rosine and your own graffiti program team and schools, painting murals on roadside cabinets to prevent graffiti. We'd like to expand that. There's an outfit called TerraCycle which does brilliant recycling schemes of not recyclable materials like dental waste, toothpaste tubes, toothbrushes. They recycle stuff like that, and we'd like to have the time to be able to get into that. We make community clean-up kits to lend out or give to people. We'd like to expand what we can do for that, and we'd also like to expand what we've been doing for Arbor Day with funding to put trees into schools. I could go on, but I'll stop.
All right, so just a few closing comments. We are helping council to achieve its objectives of a clean, green and beautiful and environmentally enhanced city. And we'd also like to recognise the importance of reconnecting communities after lockdown and through whatever long-term restrictions come next. So thank you so much for giving us the time to speak to you today. And if you have any questions, please feel free.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Anne?
Thank you, Linda. Thanks, Alexandra, again. Just thinking, a couple of community boards have said about beautifying areas and wanting to do so. How do you actually engage with a local community and get that activation going? Have you got a process that you use? Would a community board contact you?
Absolutely. Yes, that's something that we are really hoping to enhance over the next short while. We would like to be more connected with community boards. We now have almost every single community board part of our committee, which is really great to see. So we would really like to encourage community boards to come to Keep Christchurch Beautiful when they have people approach them within their community, so we can actually help make their areas more clean, green and environmentally sustainable. So we are there for the community boards. We just want everybody to be reaching out to each other.
And we have access to, we have schools in every community board that we work with, and we have other groups that we work with. So between us, we should be able to find people to help.
Thank you. Pauline?
Thank you. Your funding, where do you get most of it from? And if you receive any from council, can you tell us how much that currently is?
We are in the contestable funding round along with other charities. So last year we received $13,000 from the Strengthening Community Fund from council. Thank you. We received $8,000 from Rata Foundation, and I think it was about 2,300 from COGS. We apply to those groups. We have applications in process. I have got the Rata one to do next, and I will be looking at other possible funding sources because we're in that same position of applying.
Yeah, we used to just be funded by council, and then obviously funding has changed a lot within the city, and we understand the importance of diversifying funding.
Yeah.
We do run very bare bones, and it is a struggle. And while we're getting more and more interest from people within the community to work with us, we want to be able to do more, but unfortunately due to funding, we do find that a bit of an issue.
And the parent organisation KNZB funds you in the form of supplies and resources
Yes.
for your kits and promotions and
Yeah,
things like
and we
that.
also work with Bunnings and Mitre 10 and places like that as well when we want to get more reusable products too. So yeah, we're lucky that we have those connections.
We are moving more to reusable. So it used to be all plastic bags and little vinyl gloves. Now we have reusable gardening gloves that we collect back and wash.
Wow.
Animal feed bags that can be emptied and reused.
Wow.
So yeah.
Good on you. Thank you.
Thank you. And very quickly, Melanie.
This is super quick. Our board hasn't been involved, and the reason is because one of our board members was concerned about Keep New Zealand Beautiful getting funding from Coca-Cola. So I don't know if that's true or not, but that was the rationale. So it does. You obviously don't receive funding from
We get
there.
no funding from Coca-Cola, never have. We get no funding through KNZB. We get access to online resources and materials, but they don't fund us at all.
Yeah. So whilst we're under the umbrella, we're very independent.
And I will be coming to visit your board. I realise I didn't make it because of COVID, but I am coming.
All right. So, Alexandra, Linda, thanks very much indeed for taking the time to address us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll email you a copy of the list of points we had, just for your interest, if you want them later.
Thank you. All right. So now moving to the Central City Business Association. Annabelle Turley, the chair, and Mike Perkaski. Good to see you both. Welcome to the table.
Thanks for having us.
And Anthony and Paul, are you going to join at the table as well? That would be great. Anthony will. Okay.
Good morning. The Central City Business Association is made up of 452 members, all employing residents of Christchurch. Each of these businesses have invested in the city based on the promise of the blueprint and the anchor projects, which were supposed to be delivered 3 years ago. We do realise that this is not the fault of the council. However, we would really like to partner with the council to help have a thriving central city. A thriving central city is very, very important for the success of Christchurch as a whole. When you go to Wellington, you don't simply go there to visit Johnsonville or Dunedin to simply visit Opaho. Our suburbs have had years of thriving trade since the earthquakes, so now it's a really important time to partner with the central city to ensure that we have a thriving hub. The governance of the Central City Business Association is partnering with a community working group to deliver placemaking and legacy projects to make Christchurch world class. So I'm going to hand over to Mike to talk about.
Yeah, thanks, Annabelle. I could talk for hours about the submission because it's not your average submission. Unfortunately, I only have a few minutes, so I'll touch on the most important part, which I think is placemaking. About 2 years ago, I met Laura, who is actually here. Hi, Laura. And she's a placemaker for Otakaro, and she started me on the Salt District placemaking journey. It started with a small group from the neighbourhood who felt that the Innovation Precinct wasn't the best name for our area. Looking back, what I've realised is that process of changing the name was the most important part of building our salt community. Within weeks, our small group had increased in size, and we were bringing in all sorts of amazing people with amazing skills who just wanted to help out any way they could. We changed our name to Salt District, and I know I'm a bit biased, but it was one of the most successful rebranding exercises I've seen. The reason is that it was done by our neighbourhood for our neighbourhood. It was a true bottom-up community-led project. Best of all for the council, it didn't cost you a cent. The salt community started having regular huies, and we regularly get 30 to 40 people along. We figured out what made salt unique, and one of those things we decided was that we wanted to become world famous for street art. As a group, we wanted to create a huge piece of salt in the Salt Square and buy a projector to make it come alive at night, a first for Christchurch and possibly for New Zealand. The only problem was it was going to cost 250 grand. No problem, said Bree, one of the salt crew, and as a community we set about raising that money. We raised 250k, and I think the council put in about 5k. Incredible bang for buck for the council. The project went on to win Best Major Place Project, which was awarded by Place Leaders Asia Pacific. We flew to Canberra to accept the award. We went on to set up SALT as the first town team in New Zealand. We made town team an international movement. We applied for charitable status for our salt trust, and we have recently been granted it. I believe it is the first of its kind in the country. It makes raising money for neighbourhood projects so much easier, and allows us to apply for funding from organisations such as Rata Foundation, Lotteries Commission, Creative New Zealand, etc., and get money that would otherwise end up in Auckland or Wellington to be spent in Christchurch. We can do this across the whole inner city, and we can deliver amazing legacy projects that will put Christchurch on the map and give Christchurch residents city pride and tourist city envy. But the greatest thing is that by doing these projects from the bottom up, we will build true neighbourhood communities. And we are not asking for a handout here, we are asking for you to partner with us. If we get this right, Christchurch Inner City will become a city full of rich experiences. So essentially the submission is a roadmap for turning Christchurch Inner City into an authentic world-class experience. We have the track record, and we have an amazing team who can do the work, but most importantly we have the passion and the drive. But we need your help. We don't want to talk all day because we don't use our minutes up, but if there's any questions, let us know.
All right. Tim.
Thank you, and look, thank you very much. Your new kind of format is outstanding. I think it's a great vision. The question I've got is, we've still got a couple of organisations that were established following the earthquake, and I don't kind of want to target them, but I've got to mention them, like Gap Filler, Greening the Rubble, etc. With your proposal, I see in your last diagram here that they're not mentioned anywhere in here. Do you think it's now time to, say, focus our energies on, say, Christchurch Inc., because you've got the ins to, say, the Salt District and the Strip, etc., so we're better to concentrate on one organisation that can feed into all the areas that you're talking about, rather than higgledy-piggledy? What are you? Because we've only got so much money. We all know we're under pressure, so I'm just looking for best bang for the result.
Exactly. And look, I talk to Ryan all the time, and we're all constantly talking to those guys. And what we want to do exactly, we want an overarching organisation that takes all of that into account, and basically connects all those groups together, and hopefully comes under the same umbrella, and, as you say, use the money wisely, and make sure we're all on the same page and wanting the same outcome. And Ryan's will be all over that.
So let's say if we funded Christchurch Inc. as the sole into, obviously we've got with Christchurch NZ, etc. So would everyone be on board with that?
I've talked to Christchurch NZ for hours and hours and hours about this stuff, and we're all on the same page. Tim and Joanna love this. I'm speaking for them, but they love the concept behind this. They love the partnership, and they love the vision and where it's going to, and they can see where it'll end up. I think it's going to take time to get all that, get all those other organisations aligned in terms of bringing them under the umbrella. But it may not happen the first year, but by year 2, year 3, I think what you'll find is this. If we breathe some life into this organisation, it will become the vehicle that we can all use to get the outcomes we want.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. James.
Thank you. I think I speak for everyone when we say that it was pretty exciting reading your submission. It's not your average submission, so thank you for all the work you've done. Look, to put it bluntly, I guess we're kind of at a crossroads where you're coming to council and you're saying you either back us or you don't. So I guess what I want to know is, what's the opportunity cost if council doesn't support what you're asking us for?
Well, the funny thing about the cost is, 500 grand, as we all know, is peanuts, really. But it's actually about where we want to end up, and it's about the journey, and it's about saying, look, we're actually going to start down this path. And once we start down the path, it will snowball. I just know, I've seen it happen already, it will absolutely snowball. So the opportunity cost is potentially the inner city doesn't get this momentum going, and it doesn't get these these legacy projects which will make the inner city an experience, and it slowly just withers and dies. And I've seen it happen already, and I think it really potentially could do that. And I think Anthony would agree that certain parts will always be great, but there'll be other areas of inner city that will just flounder. And I think if we don't start breathing life into those areas and giving them a reason for people to go and go there and experience it and get passionate about those little areas, we've got some real issues on our hands. And as I say, and I think funny enough, the money, you're actually spending some of this money, quite a lot of this money, in the inner city already on projects that probably are not world class. So if you can just move that money across sideways, it won't even cost you anymore, and you'll get this amazing outcome that will blow all your minds. Honestly, it will. Trust me. You know, when we did Riverside, it doubled the foot traffic in Christchurch overnight. You know, because we sort of knew if we're going to do this right, we need to give Christchurch residents something they want. And we're all whinging about parking and all this stuff. And we were just saying it's not that. We just haven't given people what they want yet. As soon as we gave them what they want, boom, they came in their droves. And it'll happen again if we get this right.
Thank you. Leanne.
Yeah, like the others, I was inspired by your submission. It was not something that I'd seen around the table for the number of years that I've been in this role. So congratulations on that. What I really liked what you said about was that you're not wanting to replace anyone. You want to partner right across the board so that everyone brings their skill set to the table. And it's kind of like that, and that's the phrase I always get the wrong way around. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So if we all invest a certain amount, then what we get out of it is far more than if any one of us tried to do it alone.
Absolutely. Funny you should say it, because in my initial draft I had that exact saying, because it's exactly what it was. What it was when we did Little High. So for some reason that place is just so much busier and more amazing than it is than just the 7 operators in there. And it's when you sort of create something that does become that, the whole becomes bigger than the sum of the parts. And I think that's what will happen here. You know, I really feel the momentum with this group we've got. They are really clever, they're really passionate, they've got amazing ideas, but they've got the skill to deliver it too. And, you know, I think with little amounts of money, we'll go out and raise tenfold.
Yeah.
You know, we'll turn that.
But it becomes the leverage for investors that aren't necessarily investing in Christchurch right now.
That's right, yeah. So you can go to a corporate and you say, look, this is what we wanted to achieve, and that vision just gives them the ability to chuck money in and snowball it.
The last question is just that I want you to say yes to this, because I bet my colleagues from the east are thinking, oh God, we need this for New Brighton. You know, it is a model that could be replicated in other parts of the city as well, partnership.
Absolutely, and Laura, we've already been talking about that, and the great thing about that SALT model is it's so potent, and it can be dropped anywhere. It can. It's a. What's that?
You could pepper pot it. Then it would be salt and pepper pot. Right, sorry. Yeah.
That's great. So thank you very much indeed for giving us what you've described in the very first line as a transformational submission. Certainly you've set the bar very high, but thanks for the opportunity and thanks for coming along and presenting it to us today. Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening to us. Yeah, cheers.
So moving on to our next submission, Historic Places Canterbury, Mark Gerard. Good to see you, Mark. Welcome to the table.
Councillors and Mayor, thank you very much for the opportunity to make this submission. First up, we'd like to acknowledge and thank the efforts of the Christchurch City Council Heritage team, and we request the Mayor and Councillors to communicate our appreciation. In addition, we'd also like to acknowledge and thank Richie Moore and his team for their outstanding work on the Council's heritage buildings. Also, personally as Chair, I'd like to acknowledge Megan Pearson, who's been providing advice. It was clear and prompt in what was a very, very interesting COVID-19 annual plan process. It's very, very good. As a general comment, to make any submission meaningful, it depends on the quality of information available, and we'd like to say that we thought the current level of documentations was very, very good. Regards special and capital, etc., was clear, and it was really easy to go through it. Well, easy, you can go through it line by line and understand it. I realise I get no sympathy from the councillors because you'll be living and breathing it for 24 hours. Our only request would be that we would ask in future documentation that we could have more more detail on the operational activities as well as the capital into the same detail, and it'll make it easier all around for everybody. Further on, we don't normally comment on the rates, but in these COVID times, we consider the staff recommended rate increase and the accompanying increase in borrowing as prudent. In view of the circumstances, we think it's a valid compromise. Now, as regards the Robert McDougall and the Old Municipal Chambers, we agree about the deferring of the proposed work, which has been substantially brought back. It was brought back into the plan, now it's going back out again. However, we would seek assurance from the council that they be really rigorous in ensuring that the buildings are weather-tight and ensure that there's no material any deterioration in it, because we're really concerned if they're going to be put on hold. Just as an aside, we should point out to the councillors, the Robert McDougall Archive, which is a bequest from Robert McDougall, has been, as far as we're aware, has been vacant since 2003. It was a bequest, and I think the council's on and bound to do something about it. It was a fantastic gift to the city, and we can't blame the earthquake on this one. Since New Gallery's opened, it's been closed. So it'd be nice if we could get it open again to the public. We support, of course, the special heritage targeted rate, and we submit that it to be continued. As regards heritage grants, heritage buildings, heritage projects and group projects, which is now part of the council's heritage strategy, as the council is committed to supporting heritage, and the community is widely supportive of this, as you're well aware. And we think the council should be committed to beholding heritage because the community is supportive of it, as they've agreed in the document that they're going to partner with the community. And so for this one, we're making a request for heritage grants to be retained at their current levels and consideration be given to having them increased if needed. The reason we do so, that most heritage buildings, especially the commercial ones we're referring to, are usually, by the time the application is made for a heritage grant, they're shovel ready to go. It's part of the process. And it's almost seed money for those buildings. As you're well aware, having building activity in the CBD ready to go is great. It's great for rejuvenation. We're aware of one street where there's two restored heritage buildings are fully tenanted, and the remaining heritage buildings are being tenanted comparatively quickly to the CBD, to the rest of the CBD. I know one shop was recently sold, so that's post the opening up down to level 2. So these buildings are ready to go and people are interested, so the grants we consider important. We'll also remind the councillors that these grants also apply, one went to the Littleton Tug, that community groups applying for grants from many foundations, there's a provision that they must have for their proposed, that they have fundraised a third of the cost of the project, and the council grant for this is important for this. So therefore, the heritage grants we said are important. They're effectively seed capital that allows them to leverage on, so the council provides a small amount of money for the total cost, and it's seeds. We note that Landmark and HIG funding is to be combined. We're concerned a little about this because each is a slightly different and the policies are slightly different. So we sort of request for clarity that council reconsider this proposal and keep them separate so that we know what you're going to do with each one. Now, into the specifics, we'd like to request that the repair of tombstones funding being reinstated. A number of community groups have adopted their local cemeteries, and this funding encourages their efforts. We understand these groups partner with the council on the repairs, and this is a case of where a little money goes a long way. We also have heard that Selwyn District Council have repaired their tombstones, and you are considerably, I'm guessing, we've got far more financial heft than they have, and they have done so. We also request for the full funding for Heritage Week to be reinstated, and we understand this plan is slightly truncated. This is another case where the council provides base funding and community groups leverage upon that. There's some major fundraising actions happen as a result of Heritage Week, etc. I can speak from personal experience. We hosted a house tour, etc., and I was reduced to a talking standstill, which most councils around the table realise that's a major achievement as we took people through the house explaining what it was. To me, to be talked to a talking standstill is a big event. And so this is again where you're in partnership with the community. And the Ebbets Band Rotunda, we think this is great that it's now finally it's been much delayed. And we remind everybody this was a magnificent request by Thomas Edmund. We, of course, endorse the proposing of the Council Heritage Buildings, Troke Boy, Ebbets Band Rotunda, Rose Historic Chapel, etc. But we also asked just that reinstate full funding for Mona Vale Bathhouse, and the reason for this is you have spent so much money on Mona Vale thus far to have a bit of it not repaired, and it's really well liked. You've got a commercial operator in there working, and I think it's ready to finish because you've already started the project to give it completeness. And this relates to the city being regenerated and fully recovering from the earthquake. The same applies to the Peacock Fountain renewal, and we pushed for this one because it's part of the major entrance of the Botanical Gardens, and we think if we're going to say that the city, we've made our comeback. This is a statement we've got to say that yes, we are. We're telling the world that our regeneration is a reality. And the other one we have concerns about is Coronation Hall, which has been taken off the list. We understand it's been waiting for funding for restoration since 2015. It's fire damage, and we're really concerned about any material damage as a result of it being left in abeyance like that. On the proposed level of services, we're in agreement with what's going on, the call centre, etc. We just ask that you develop, we've asked this really, a more complex way of measuring what the level of service and how well you deliver, because we don't know whether the citizen survey will work in our interactions with the council. And we find the council staff to be very, very good, and we've said before, we've probably got nice things to say about the council staff, but we haven't got an opportunity to tell them, so unless I'm surveyed individually by the citizen survey, I can't tell you. So if you could get feedback, it'd be really good. You're doing something, work with building, etc. We support the intangible heritage policy and the funds set aside, and we also support for guidelines for Heritage Week. We just ask to be flexible because our collective history is very diverse, and we'd like Heritage Week to be able to, for those groups to express themselves, whatever the theme is that they fit in. The other issue that comes up time and time again, and we'd ask them to follow it up, is could we request that the council engage in formal discussion with the central government to form a partnership for the repair of the provincial council building. We think it's of national significance, and we think the government will have real difficulty in Wellington saying no to a building of national significance, and I think it's totally appropriate for the council to commence formal discussions about that, to partnership with that. And that, councillors, is it. Thank you very much for hearing it.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Anne.
Thanks, Mark. The Robert McDougall, some have suggested that it just be reopened. It's obviously tied in intrinsically with the development of the museum. What are your, does Heritage, does your organisation have an opinion about that?
You're referring to the future use of it?
Yes, or the fact that rather than being left there, could it be opened in the meantime, reopened?
As regards to future list, we haven't officially made a use. Our efforts have been on getting it repaired so we can get it open, get it focused on that one. And so, first up, our position, it was set up as a gallery, so therefore it must retain whatever role in the future as a gallery. And that's the most important, and to have it open. The future use as regards the arrangement that the council have when it comes to that arrangement. I understand there are other views. Christchurch Civic Trust has a view. But our argument, could you please start the strengthening and the repair? We think this building's been in abeyance for too long, out of public circulation since 2003, and it's time that we did something about it. I hope that answers the question.
All right, Mark, thank you very much indeed for the submission and for coming along to present to us this morning. Thank you. Okay, so moving next to the Arts Centre of Christchurch. Philip Aldridge and Felicity, good to see you here as well.
Morning.
Good morning.
Mr Chairman, Andrew, councillors. Thank you so much for asking us along. We're really chuffed to be here. We know the City Council's had a tough job to pare back its spending in this annual plan, and we can see you've given it a lot of thought with some good reductions. We've been doing our own pruning of costs at the Arts Centre, working our way through making a number of major cuts to our operations so we can save some money too. But even with these occurring, we simply cannot break even. Rental from the 2/3 open site, which it is now, at 85% tenancy is not enough to cover even the reduced costs that we're looking at, and it wasn't enough to cover costs before the earthquakes either. However, this may surprise you, we're not here to ask you for money in the 2021 annual plan. We know you can't afford it this year, and with the major cuts we're proposing in careful management, we think we can last another year, maybe 18 months. But unless we have some indication from you that you'll be able to set aside some long-term funding in the long-term plan for us from 2022 onwards, we will have to close. You'll be aware that currently the Arts Centre receives no ongoing capital funding or operational funding from the City Council or central government, instead relying on individual donors, trusts and foundations. We think we've done pretty well up till now. I know a lot of people see us as having got on with it and done a fantastic job compared to some other heritage sites in town, but we're going to have to stop it soon if we can't get some help. The Arts Centre is recognised by the City Council and the Christchurch District Plan as being a place of high heritage significance, high cultural significance, high architectural and aesthetic significance, and high technological and craftsmanship significance. But unless the City Council can back up these admirable thoughts by reintroducing the subsidy we used to get that was removed from us in 2018, the Arts Centre, which is, you will recall, a whole city block of heritage buildings, will have to close. That means the current trust and trust board will be disestablished and the site will have to be handed over to another body to manage. Extensive inquiries have indicated that body is most likely to be you, the City Council, and it will cost a lot more for you to reopen the site if it's closed. We have enough insurance payout left to restore and reopen 2 more buildings, including the Observatory Tower, which will be open to schools and the public, but the rest, along with the Ralston Avenue frontage, will have to be mothballed. However, it's important to draw a distinction between the insurance money, which is being used to restore the earthquake-damaged buildings, and our operational costs. It's our operational funding that's going to run out in a year or so, and that's where we need your help. Philip.
Thank you. Yeah, well, we're very grateful for this opportunity and to be able to speak to you all, because we have been engaging with council staff, and we've had the opportunity to talk to Leanne, and for that we're very grateful, but we haven't been able to speak to you all. So we're not quite sure how much you're aware of this situation, and actually that this is now last chance saloon. The COVID crisis has exacerbated our problems, but the underlying issues remain the same. That site has never managed to pay its way. The business case just doesn't work. It's the largest collection of heritage buildings in the country. It actually represents half of the entire portfolio of Heritage New Zealand. But it's run without a single cent of subsidy from anybody, from council or government. I've been in the role for 2 years. I've been padding up and down Lambton Quay. We've regularly been told, go back to Christchurch, it's a local issue. We're getting no help at all from government. And to reiterate Felicity's point, I think it's important to make a distinction between the business and the 2 bits of the business. There is the restoration, the capital works, the huge success that we've seen there in leading the restoration of this city in some ways, and beautiful craftsmanship. But there is the other part of the business that is the operations, the arts centre, the community centre, what those buildings are there for under an Act of Parliament, but an Act of Parliament that never gave us any money. So we're in a really difficult situation. We've got 3 major artistic institutions on your doorstep here. We've got an art gallery, which is funded by the council, and $26 per head, per visitor. We've got a magnificent museum, which is funded through legislation and forcing the council to fund it. And we've got the Arts Centre, an entire city block, as Felicity says, that receives nothing. And so we are going to have to close. and it will be more expensive to reopen it under another entity. And as Felicity says, that's probably you. The other thing that might happen, and I'll stop quite soon because I think you probably have lots of questions. The other thing is that we're still in with a chance of getting some money from the Shovel Ready Fund, and thank you for your support in that. And so there may be some tremendous news around the corner. We don't know yet. They haven't said no to us. So we're still in with a chance. But even if we get that, it does not address the issues we're talking about, which are operational. And it'll be tragic to see it closed. We support everything you're talking about in the plan, the intangible heritage. We're doing a lot of that ourselves, the Matariki Festival, the weaving, Oranga. This is becoming increasingly important to us. We are a centre of the community. But we need your help. And what we need is an indication that you are going to be able to help us, because we are already beginning the wind down of the organisation. There's a major restructure going on right now. We're disassembling everything that we have achieved over the last few years. I'll stop and let you ask us questions.
Thank you. So I've got Sam, Leanne, and then Jake if we've got time.
Yeah, thank
Sam.
you. Mine was largely answered in terms of the shovel ready. But could you just perhaps explain to me how crucial getting that over the line would be to the future of it? So completely get the distinction between the CapEx, the OpEx, and the operational costs, but how crucial that approval of that shovel ready project would be for the city?
It would allow us to complete the main frontage on Worcester Boulevard. So the engineering blocks where the old Court Theatre was, those will, we don't have enough money to do that. So the insurance money runs out in about 2 years. It'll allow us to complete the observatory and open that to the public, and a small boutique around it, which will give us a good secure income. But the main frontage and on the centre of the site will remain mothballed.
Thank you. Leanne.
Thank you, and thank you for taking the opportunity to come and brief councillors. I think this is actually the appropriate way to do it, because this is an LTP issue, but what we're hearing from you is the importance of the signal that we send and how we are going to engage on that. This is another one of those buildings which was a heritage group of buildings in this case that was saved from the wrecking ball by worthy citizens who stood up and said no. And in this case, a legislative framework put around a governance structure, but as you say, no funding stream, as was the case with the Canterbury Museum, which has been opted out of by different districts over time. So actually there's only 4 of us left in that funding pot. And I think it is time for us to think of regional facilities. This was Canterbury University. It wasn't Christchurch University. It was Christchurch Boys High School in part. But there is a bigger story to tell from a regional perspective. And I think the regional facilities component of it needs to be structured in a way that takes into account what are truly regional facilities that happen to be located in the city of Christchurch. So, so thank you for coming and raising everyone's awareness of it. And you'll notice that I just use this as an opportunity to make a speech instead of asking you a question.
So we'll move very quickly, Jake, to a quick question from you.
Yep, an actual question. Hey, what is the size of your shortfall, operational shortfall?
1.5 million a year. So we've been paying for that from the interest from the capital that we received from the insurance payout.
Cool.
So that now diminishes. Interest rates have fallen, and we're reaching the end of it.
And a big chunk of that is insurance. Yes. So
I've got Yanni first, so there probably won't be time, Pauline, unfortunately, but Yanni, we'll take yours really quickly.
Just really quickly, you've mentioned a number of other organisations and facilities. Do you think there's a need to think about the number of facilities we have in the city and our capacity to sustain that across the arts and cultural sector?
There may be. That's a question for you rather than us.
All right, thank you. Pauline, yeah, really quickly, though. Really quickly.
How much did we fund?
800,000 a year.
And then didn't we reduce it?
Yes, it went down to 350.
Sorry, to
350
so
at the end. Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks,
All
Andrew.
right. Thank you very much. Look, thanks very much indeed for coming and presenting to us, and as Leanne said, in this particular forum as well. Good to see you, good to hear from you. Thank you very much indeed for the submission.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do appreciate it. Thank you.
So moving to our next submission, the Property Council of New Zealand and James Riddoch attending in person, and we've got Natalia attending via audio-visual link, I think, as well.
Yes.
Yep, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think Natalia is there on video link.
Can we just check that Natalia is here?
There we are.
Yep, excellent. Natalia, thank you for joining us. All right, so let's move into the submission. Thank you.
Fantastic. Good morning, and thank you, Deputy Mayor and councillors. And thank you for the opportunity to present today in support of our submission on the annual plan. I'm James Riddoch, here in my capacity as branch president of the South Island branch of the Property Council. Natalia Trapatova is a senior advocacy advisor from our national office of Property Council, and has also been working very hard on the submissions we've been making. Property Council itself is the leading advocate for the property sector in New Zealand. Our purpose is together shaping cities where communities thrive. We believe in the creation and retention of well-designed, functional and sustainable built environments which contribute to New Zealand's overall prosperity. We support legislation that provides a framework to enhance economic growth, development, livability and growing communities. Tens of billions of dollars have been invested by Council, the Crown and the private sector in the rebuild, regeneration and recovery of the city. Now's not the time to put that investment at risk by retrenching into austerity. Council expenditure, as you know, remains vital to the local economy and its general confidence. That being said, ratepayers are under significant financial pressure due to the ongoing impacts and uncertainties of COVID-19. As such, it's a very difficult balancing act. By and large, we consider the Council has struck the right balance in the circumstances, and we commend the Council and its officers on the updated draft annual plan. The proposed update helps soften the economic impact of COVID-19 on ratepayers, while ensuring the provision of essential services and the delivery of core infrastructure projects. In terms of the proposed options, we support Council's proposed option 1, being the general rate increase of 3.5% and associated borrowing. This very much is a rainy day, and as such it's an appropriate time to increase Council borrowing to plug the funding shortfall. We believe the option taken will ease the funding burden on all ratepayers while remaining fiscally prudent and ensuring key infrastructure projects continue to progress in order to maintain the workforce needed post-COVID. We strongly support the Council's proposal to continue a rates repayment extension and the reduction in late payment penalties from 10 to 7%. Those proposals will provide additional targeted relief for residential ratepayers and small to medium businesses facing hardship. We recommend that Council makes use of alternative funding and financing mechanisms to reduce reliance on general rates funding and ensure rates affordability going forward. Alternative tools may include user charges, such as water charges and congestion charging, targeted rates, public-private partnerships and special purpose vehicles. In regard to special purpose vehicles, this would involve debt sitting off the Council's balance sheet, which can be helpful for councils approaching debt limits, although we note the debt limits are currently under review. Such a model has been successfully implemented internationally and has been adopted for greenfield developments in Mildale in New Zealand. The tool has become a foundation for the infrastructure funding and financing bill, which the Property Council also supports. In terms of these services and infrastructure, we commend the Council's decision to reassess its capital program for 2021 in light of COVID-19. We endorse the focus on capital projects that are well committed and will therefore have an immediate stimulatory effect on the local economy or benefit from external funding, therefore maximising the value for the ratepayer. We also support the Council spending on the maintenance and upgrading of water supply and stormwater infrastructure, roading upgrades and other essential infrastructure and core services. This is no regret investment which will support the environment and the community's prosperity, health and safety and well-being. Further to this, the projects that help boost the local economy should be and are prioritised. This would include the anchor projects such as multi-use arena. Council proposes to charge an excess water use targeted rate for residential households that use significantly more water than the average household. We support the proposal, although would prefer a user pay model to reflect more accurately water usage costs. We welcome further collaboration on this as part of the long-term plan process. We support in principle the proposal to reduce the building warranted fitness fee structure. Again, we look forward to reviewing the detail of that in due course. In terms of the strategic framework, I've just got two comments there. First of these on public transport. And we support the proposed strategic framework as it includes essential priority areas for ensuring Christchurch's prosperity now and into the future. However, the increasing active public and shared transport opportunities and use priority has been removed from the framework. In Greater Christchurch, the population is expected to grow by 150,000 people to around 640,000 by 2048. Public transport is key to managing this growth and improving access to economic and social opportunities. We'd therefore recommend reinstating the public transport priority to ensure appropriate prioritisation of public transport related projects and infrastructure. The other strategic point was just regarding the role of Christchurch NZ. Growth in the Christchurch economy remains below the national rate for the June 2019 quarter as the city continues to transition post-earthquake. This underpins the need for continued effort to attract more business activity and people to the region and grow productivity and create jobs. And this is becoming even more relevant now in light of the COVID-19 impacts. And with this in mind, we acknowledge the importance of Christchurch NZ in this and recommend maintaining their funding and mandate. One other point, which is simply that it's critical for the central city that workers return to work in Alert Level 1. This is perhaps a no-cost piece of leadership that could be undertaken by council, government and Christchurch NZ and perhaps the Economic Recovery Forum. We need to have, wherever possible, workers back at work and stimulating the central city. Depreciation, the government's reintroduced building depreciation deduction claims for property owners with commercial and industrial properties. As part of the $2.8 billion support package for business, we recommend leveraging this wherever possible as we'll encourage investment in industrial and commercial buildings. So thank you once again for the opportunity to provide the feedback on the plan. It gives our members a chance to have their say on how Christchurch is shaped today and in the future. We commend Council on the updated plan and endorse the recommended proposal. That's the end of the presentation, and Natalia and I would be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Leanne.
Well, Mike and I were just sort of looking at the strategic priorities, because I mean it was a very good point that you made. Under the community outcomes, under the livable city, it says a well-connected and accessible city promoting active and public transport. But I think what you're talking about is actually seeing that in the connections to the outer districts, which is something that we've, developing with the Greater Christchurch Partnership, which is the city, the two districts and the region in terms of the urban connections. But that's what I understood from your submission, is you really want us to highlight that as a strategic
I'll let
priority.
Natalia talk to this one. This was in fact her point.
Right.
Yeah, hi everyone. The Mayor, I think you made a valid point, and I think that's exactly what we were trying to say through our submission. And as James mentioned earlier, it's very, very, very important to make sure that this priority is in there, to make sure that, the Christchurch's prosperity is, Christchurch is doing well in the future.
Excellent.
Yep. Any other questions?
Yeah, can I have a look at what the words are on the wall behind you? Because it looks like...
Oh, it's our vision. So our vision for Property Council is together shaping cities where community thrives. Yes, that's exactly what we're doing. Yeah.
I'm giving you a big thumbs up. That's really great.
Oh, okay, that's great. That's great feedback. I will talk to my manager about it.
Great, thank you, James and Natalia. Thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning with a very comprehensive submission. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
So last but not least, Anthony Goff representing the Terrace. Anthony, welcome back to the table. And Annabelle, welcome back to the table.
Lovely. Lovely, thank you very much. I've just brought Annabelle here because it's probably worth knowing that the businesses and the Central City Business Association actually work very, very closely together. If we don't, we're not going to actually jump this city out of the doldrums. It's been an extraordinary run for the Centre City. Everything's been against it, but there's been huge commitment and we're gaining ground. I just thought I'd quickly run over my submission. It's a really brief submission. The first thing, it talks about rates. It says there's a huge commercial differential for rates in that you've actually got commercial properties paying more than 60% per dollar value of capital than you do for your other places like residential. And yet the Centre City has already got its infrastructure sitting there, and the value of the properties is hugely higher than anything else. And we question why you continue to want to penalise the commercial sector in this way. I know there's little that we can do, we just sit there and accept it. But actually, I see no good reason for it, so I question it. The one thing I would say is, I'd like you to increase charges, please, on vacant and derelict sites. And I think you should look to try and do that, because we've got some people, a lot of out-of-towners, who just don't care about the city. And they're quite happy to leave a vacant site for the next 50 years. That is not helping. You need to find a way to penalise those people and cause them to resell. I've got a vacant site on Castle Street. I don't have the money to develop it. I'm looking to sell it. I'm not looking to land bank it and think, oh, this is a great thing for future generations. That does not help Christchurch now. So please, put a penalty on those vacant sites. Multi-purpose arena, I think a lot of people don't understand that there's a difference between capital and OPEX, and I'm delighted to hear from these people, all of you, that you do understand that, and you've got the crazy people like Minta who turns around and says we should be not doing the capital things that will help our rates. It doesn't. Critical that you get on with that multi-purpose arena. You have no idea how much it will make a difference to everyone here. So, and at the moment, the front end is a small part and you're getting government funding. So please, don't delay, get on with it. We've got an opportunity. Homeless and bedding have been sort of gently taken off our streets. They're creeping back. I think this is a time where we should try and look for a mechanism to address that. It's not a good look, and we need to not sit our hands and pretend it doesn't exist. So I think this is an opportunity to work on that. Next thing is the Central City Business Association. It is critical that it keeps going. None of us, like Annabelle, myself, I must get paid for it. We're putting a lot of time into this, but it cannot continue without any funding. It generally has been here $100,000 a year, and I asked for at least for that. You would have heard this earlier submission as a sort of a real jump forward, but as a minimum, we need to make sure we continue that 100,000. I've also commented about council re-looking at costs, and I had a really good discussion with Leanne and Dawn yesterday, and delighted to hear I think they have it well in hand, so I'm not going to make more comments. And the last comment I'd make is I want you to increase the charges, please. So here you're finding me actually asking you to increase charges, not reduce them. Why on earth are we using rates to subsidise the Litchfield Street car park building? Everywhere else in town, on multi-storey, it's $4 an hour. You got yours at $2.80. There is no reason for you to have it at $2.80. You're using the rates to subsidise. For God's sake, lift the charge. And you're hearing it from someone who's passionate about the city. I know car parking is a big issue, but you don't need to use rates for that part. I'm open to questions.
Great, thank you. Are there questions? Yanni.
Sorry, how do you know that we're using rates to pay for Litchfield?
Quite simply, you can't make a return on investment for a car parking building. I know. Mine are costing me $70,000 a car space. At $2.80, you are not making a profit on it. You're actually using it. It's user charges.
So sorry, there's a difference between using rates to subsidise the ongoing cost of it versus making a profit on it, right? So
you think it's wrong to make a profit on car parking?
Well, given what we've heard previously from people in the central city about having free car parking, I think some people would think that if we were seen to be excessively charging from car parking to make a profit, people would probably be quite concerned. But that's certainly what we've heard in terms of recent feedback. But I just really wanted to understand if we are the perception of using rates to subsidise car parking. And I don't know, maybe we can get some information about that, because I would agree. I don't think we should be subsidising it.
Well, everyone else is at $4 and the others are reasonably full.
Well, the card is not. Yeah.
It's surprisingly full. It's not totally full, but the council one fills first because it's at $2.80. Why are you doing that?
Right. The other thing, I was going to check previously, because everyone's making a lot about this new way of doing stuff, but previously the council used to use the increase in car parking charges to go ring fence into the Central City promotion. I think it was through the Central City Business Association maybe originally, and also the Chamber of Commerce. It was about $850,000 a year. So the idea of tying, I was just trying to understand really if you'd support tying in the issue of car parking in terms of the charges, going back to a dedicated fund to support the Central City as a way of kind of covering those costs.
Great idea.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Further questions? Anne?
Thank you. I'm interested in the business differential that you mentioned, and I understand that the Christchurch differential is much lower than other centres, and that was because of the earthquake impact, and that some changes were made then. As part of the presentations and the workshops that we had, we were given some information about the business differential and the costs that are able to be claimed by businesses that actually lower that to being actually somewhere very close, I think $1.06 or something like that, to the above the dollar for businesses that residents aren't able to do. Is that right?
Well, it depends what tax rate you're on.
Yeah.
Auckland, if you want to know what Auckland did, they actually took a chunk of that that differential and actually gave it to Heart of the City, which is the equivalent of Central City Business Association. So that's how it's funded in Auckland.
Right.
And we would see nothing wrong with doing that here in Christchurch. But just to sit there as an extra revenue gatherer because we get tax deduction doesn't sit well with me.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Anne?
Thank you. I'd like your feedback a little bit on retail hours in the city. I'm wondering if it's ever been considered to open later and stay open into the early evening. Often I'm in there and I notice people, particularly tourists, well not so much at the moment obviously, but wandering and nothing's opened. Have you considered,
We certainly have. We'd be very keen to see. I actually see no reason why we don't do 10 till 7 at night.
Yeah.
But if you want to know my bars and restaurants, I have a clause in their lease that says they must be open from 11 in the morning to 11 at night, 7 days a week, no exceptions. So you'll find all my tenants, the only day I think is Christmas Day, and if we could open them, we would. But anyway, that's what we do. So I totally agree with you. I think and I think we've sort of, perhaps you could comment because you've got a pharmacy.
The Business Association that comes up time and time again, and we are fully supportive of a standardised business hours because we want every resident to come and enjoy the city and not have an excuse that, I went to the shop and it was closed. So that is something that we are working with, but it is very difficult because Anthony's tenants are very lucky having him as a landlord because they do have set hours they have to be open, but not every landlord has that in their lease, which I think is a big shame, really.
Probably a single point of difference. You need to point of difference for the city day.
All right. Thank you very much indeed, Anthony, for taking the time and coming along to present to us today. And thanks for your passion for and your commitment to Christchurch as well. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
So that brings us to the end of the hearings panel this morning. So now what I need to do is to adjourn the meeting until 9:30 a.m. on Tuesday the 23rd of June, when we'll continue with the hearing of submissions. So I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.